Thing to order. Connie, could you give us a roll call, please?
Mrs. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Gust,
Here.
Mr. Shoemaker,
Here.
Mrs. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Winkler.
Here.
All right, let's stand and have our invocation and our pledge of allegiance. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this day. Guide us as we make these decisions to benefit our staff and students. Please continue your protection over us, and thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next is our approval of the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda. This is Paul Winkler.
Second, Jerry Gust.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, voting is open. Mr. Winkler,
Yes.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Shoemaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Motion carries. That approves our agenda. Our first order of business is under new business is number 1, to discuss the possible amending of the current educational plan based on the increasing COVID-19 cases in Monroe County and the recent designation of Belmont County on the Ohio Public Health Advisory System. They are now orange. Cindy, do you want to give us a little background and direction?
Yes, thank you, President Smith. I want to thank each of you and welcome you to coming to an early board meeting for us. I think what we have to talk about today is pretty important. I'd like to preface today by saying it is challenging times for us. And as of Thursday, late afternoon, the Ohio Public Health Advisory System did change a couple colors on some of our surrounding counties. There are only 4 counties in the state that are still yellow, and Monroe County happens to be one of those. And we've been working diligently with our leadership team late into the night, and along with our health department partners to decide what kind of recommendations we wanted to take to you today. They came as late as 15-20 minutes ago, so bear with me. I think we've got what we think is the best plan that we have to move forward today. I want to give you a couple facts. Well, first of all, I want to reach out to our dedication of our staff and faculty and our community partners and say, I think they're doing one heck of a good job of keeping our kids safe in the school. You look at the numbers around us, we'll talk about the numbers that we have and the decisions that we're making, and most of it's happening outside of the school right now. It's in our adult populations, and I think that means that the folks here are working hard to follow the rules and keep us safe. And it's been late nights, and I appreciate that dedication that they have. We have 2 main goals that we want to keep in mind, and we have had these continued plans throughout the beginning here over the summer when you guys approved our initial educational plans. Number 1, and probably the first priority we have, is to keep our community, including our outside partners and our students and our staff, safe. And we've been committed to that. Second of all, is to keep the educational plan that we are delivering to our students first class, and to stay in school as long as we can. We've been doing a good job of that. I'm surprised that we are still operating at the capacity we have right now, seeing what the rest of the state has been challenged with. With that, as of this morning, Our district has 106 quarantined students across the county in all of our buildings. There are 11 positive cases. Belmont County, based on the Ohio Public Health Advisory system, has gone orange, and so has Washington County to our south. Noble County and us have stayed in the yellow zone. We have 11 positive cases. Unfortunately, 7 of those positive cases are in the Monroe Central High School building. We look at them as being a little bit of a hot spot for us. Working in collaboration very closely with our local health departments, including Monroe, Belmont, and the Wetzel County Health Department, we're bringing our recommendations to you today. Our first one that we want to bring to you is based on the 7 positive cases at Monroe Central High School. Our recommendation is to move them to 100% remote plan from October 26th through November 6th. That will give us 2 weeks and should take the majority of our quarantined students off and back into school. At that point, on November 9th, for this specific building, we would like to move to the hybrid plan and until further notice, in case we have more quarantines that come up here and positive cases in the coming week. For sports in that specific building, for the next 2 weeks, they do not have any competitions. So we like to, at their building, suspend for 2 weeks sports to get through these, the high amount of cases that we have in their building. And at that point, then move forward with continuing those programs. For our recommendations for Powhatan, Powhatan happens to be sitting in a county that changed to orange. Based on the fact that there are a low case of COVID in that building, I believe we've been to 4, possibly sitting at 2 quarantines only, and working with, as early as this morning, the Belmont County Health Department, our recommendation is that that school stay open at 100% today until further notice. So we want to monitor what's going on, but we think the best educational plan for Powhatan is to go and stay on the 100% face-to-face plan that they currently are doing. Our recommendation for Bellsville, and here are the numbers, but the recommendation working with Principal Tolsna there is that they stay on a 100% face-to-face learning plan also. They're a little unique. These are their numbers, and I want to share that with you because if you decided differently, they would be willing to do a remote plan, the hybrid plan. In their elementary, they have 219 students, including pre-K. They have 173 students who live in Monroe County. That's 79% of their population. They have 46 students who live or commute from the Belmont area, which is on the orange, and that is 21% of their population. As far as their high school, they have 115 students, not counting those that go to Swiss Hills Career Center. That's 97 that live in Monroe County, which is 84% of their population. They have 18 that live or commute from the Belmont area, which is 16% of their population. Currently, their quarantine students is under control, and they feel like they can continue to stay on their current learning plan, maintaining our safety. We do worry about the students who travel from Belmont. The same recommendation is coming from River Elementary School with no input at this point at 8 o'clock this morning from the high school side. But for the River Elementary side, they have 45 students who commute or live in the Belmont County area, but they believe that because of low incidence in the building, that they can continue to stay at their 100% face-to-face learning plan. The recommendation from Skyview looks a lot like Belmont, looks a lot like Bellsville, that because of the low incidence and being in a county that is identified as being yellow, they'd like to stay at the 100% face-to-face, but would be willing to move towards the hybrid model if needed. The recommendation from Woodsfield Elementary School, and they are one of our higher populated buildings and also sitting there at the Monroe Central Campus. They do have some cases in their building. They would like to go to a 4-day, 100% capacity and a 1-day remote, which would be on the Wednesday day. Recommendations from Swiss Hills. They would like to continue on their current plan, realizing that a lot of their plan is determined by the other feeder buildings, but they have 27 students who commute from Orange counties, and they felt like that was a low number and that they were able to control currently what they are doing in their building. My recommendation for sports outside of Monroe for the next 2 weeks is that each individual game be looked at individually. There are only 4 yellow counties in the state, and to look at who is on each team individually, and if we have a lot of quarantine or any positives, that be taken into consideration and shared with the team that our competition is scheduled with. Also to look at what color the county is and the amount of incidences that are happening at that school that we would be competing with, and take all of that into consideration. And if the safety cannot be maintained, that we reschedule those games until we can slow down the amount of quarantines we currently have. That's the recommendation that we have for you today. The two that we, so for the most part, everyone wants to stay in at 100% face-to-face, except we would like to go 100% remote for 2 weeks for Monroe with no sports for that 2-week period, and then move to a hybrid. We would like to stay 100% at Powell-Hatton Elementary, who happens to be sitting in the Orange County, because of the low amount of incidences that they've been able to control in their building. And then Woodsfield Elementary would like to go to the 4-day, 100% capacity model with a Wednesday being a remote day for them. We've taken into consideration transportation. We also have our food and nutrition department has also put a schedule together to allow the feeding program to continue on whatever model we move to. They've been very responsive to that. So we think all of our principals had said, whatever the decision is today, that they are ready to move to that model. We are thinking we would like to start any of these changes on Monday. Today's an early release day, and that would give also our IT department, who has prepared us to allow the kids to go remote, and along with the teachers and the students to get everything they need to start next week. At that, are there any questions? Hearing none, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Okay, so hearing the update from Mrs. Bro, what's the pleasure of the board?
Hey, I do have one question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Why is the health department here today?
Well, I will share with you, their morning starts early around 6 o'clock. And I know this because we're in contact, but they are doing contact tracing. I know alone that it's for Monroe County, it's over 100 kids that those families are called every day. So they're calling those. I did ask if they needed to be here or wanted to be here, and if we needed, we could call them.
No, I thought a situation like this, the health department ought to be here.
Well, I just was off the phone with them, let's say 30 minutes ago, with their agreeing that in collaboration, we were bringing this recommendation to you.
Okay, Jerry Gus, my question is, has any government agency or the local health department told you we should shut down?
They will not give that. They work in recommendation with us. And that's what, in collaboration with us to bring the recommendation to you, and that's how it's come today.
So the polls we signed, if we was in yellow, we'd keep open, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The policy was that if we stayed in yellow, we would be open.
That is the policy you originally did. We've learned more about how this coronavirus moves through the county. I'm going to say, I think our staff has done a heck of a good job along with the health department in controlling it. We are highly surprised we're in the position we are today. But I believe we have to be flexible, and I think that we were fair in the beginning, that we knew we needed to do that. I share often when I take calls here in the office about the yellow and the orange markings. One thing to keep in mind is the coronavirus does not know when it comes to the border that we're all of a sudden in a yellow county. We have a hot spot at Monroe High School, and we think we need to get a handle on it. There are 7 positive cases alone in that building. And they seem to be, as far as the school district, they seem to be focused in that building. We have a high amount of quarantine students because of that, but across the district, the quarantine is at 106. But the ones that we're concerned about are those positives. So
Cindy,
yes, you are correct. We did pass that policy, but we're coming back to you to ask to reconsider in this instance, controlling it at Monroe Central. And by the way, I just, and Greg, hang on one second. I did just get a text from Ed, and River High School's recommendation is to remain on the full capacity 5-day plan that they are currently on. Greg.
Yeah, the beginning of the year, Bellsville was shut down for, I think, approximately 2 weeks under the same circumstances, and then went back 100%. What's the point, or what's the thinking or theory behind Monroe Central after 2 weeks going on hybrid? Couldn't we reevaluate after a certain period of time and get back into 100% like we did for Bellsville?
Yes, correct. So something that when we were originally talking about the plans that we were trying to approve that we were going to act on way back in the summer, that has changed now, is I think we have to look at each individual situation as an individual situation. In the Bellsville case, what happened is we lost too many essential staff to keep the building open. And we didn't have the replacements to put in there. At that time, the student population wasn't experiencing cases, but I lost all of my essential staff to keep the doors open. And that's what happened there. And it was early in our decisions of how to handle this. We learn on each instance. For Monroe, we did do a 1 week working in collaboration with the health department, we did 1 week to see if this thing was going to explode versus what should have been probably a recommendation to go to 2 weeks. They worked with us. I said, let's try 1 week and see if our numbers explode. Well, they did. So now we're coming back saying we've got to reevaluate the situation. The 7 positive cases are highly a concern of mine because not so, you know, my students might be able to handle the COVID a little easier than my adult teaching staff that might be at a higher risk are. And so I have made that promise to those teachers that I would keep them as safe as we could as a school district. And at this point, my concerns are, let's get out of that building. Let's get through a quarantine period and see if we can lower these numbers and then come back into the building. So I'm looking at it a little bit differently than the situation I did the first time on Bellsville. I didn't have a choice in Bellsville. I didn't have anybody to run the place because of the quarantine list. Here, I'm now more concerned about the spread. And my partners that help us make these decisions are just as nervous as I am right now.
Cindy, this is Ronnie again. I got a question. Did the health department say these 7 kids at Monroe Central, were they all at the same party or all together or anything? Do you know that?
Well, one of them is a teacher, and I don't. That's a hard. It's really hard to identify where somebody ends up being positive. No, I don't. Once they throw a positive test, I just look at it as I have a positive case. So I don't know, Ronnie, that I can answer that at that moment. What I hear from my colleagues in the surrounding counties on these cases is at the moment, it seems like the children are picking it up from adults who possibly are picking it up in all kinds of situations, which sometimes is from work, their work colleagues. So I don't think that's a fair question to attempt to try because you don't know where you pick it up. You can speculate where you thought you got it. So
Okay, I just had the question because I said, you know, if what we do here, the parents are going to have to realize they're the ones putting their kids in jeopardy, letting them go to these parties and that and then spreading it.
Well, that is a hard conversation that I've had with some folks of, you know, when you have these gatherings, the suggestion is that the gatherings are where we start getting the explosions. But as far as targeting who is positive currently, where they picked it up, sometimes that's a little hard to be able to say you exactly got it from this place.
Okay, thanks. Hey, but I do realize we got to do something with Monroe Central. But the rest of the schools, I'd like to see us, you know, this is me, 100% all the schools, except I liked it how you did Bellsville. They came back, and I don't see why we can't do the same to Monroe Central.
The recommendation is on the 9th to come back as a hybrid plan. But to take that, you know, a week at a time, ease into that first week. If we've controlled this, then go back 100%, but use that recommendation from that building principal and his staff.
But
They've been hit kind of hard here the last couple weeks.
this is just one board member. I don't think we ought to go to hybrid. I want 100%, and just like we did Bellsville, come back 100% after we're off the remote.
I think that's a good recommendation. I think right now the solid answer that I need is to get us, that's 2 weeks. If we go from Monday to then come back on the 9th. We
Cindy,
can get a better feeler for what is happening in that situation.
Cindy, this is Greg. The way I feel about it in terms of on a personal level with my daughter, it's very difficult for me to do certain things because of my work schedule and she's, you know, having somebody for her. I understand there is a hot spot. I get that. But I feel like 2 weeks is a very long time to just sit and wait. Can we maybe can we evaluate after next week or maybe next Friday, see if it's starting to come down, and then maybe go to the 4-day like Woods Elementary, where you have the Wednesday for a cleaning day or a prep day for the teachers. I just feel like 2 full weeks out is too much for a lot of people. And I know I'm not the only one in that situation where you've got a student that I've got to miss work or make other plans. I realize we have to get it under control, but I feel like when we voted for all this while we were still yellow, to take that in consideration. But I also understand that you got to nip the hot spots as quickly as you can. With that being said, I think we need to educate our public to say that this is not a joke, that you can't have your own get-togethers. And if you do, you have to social distance and wear the mask. And I think that's where we're really falling off right now is it's not the kids. The kids are suffering, but the adults are taking things into their own hands. And I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it to somebody's face that we have to be smarter as a community in general to combat this thing till we can get through it.
I agree. I think there's a lot of value in your statements, which are the exact same recommendations of when I was working with the health department on the first week that we closed down at Monroe because I said, hey, let's get through 1 week. And that was in the beginning of this. And we had small amount of cases then. And the concern was just go 2 weeks and let's nip it. And I said, hey, work with us. Let's get through 1 week. Let's see if the numbers change. We came back, we went back to school for another week and they're exploding on us. My concerns to you today in that building, that specific building, is that I have made promises to staff members that I would do my best to keep them safe. And today I don't feel like I can in that building. I have parents that had made an agreement to hold on and wait for us to see what the county turned on Thursday, because we thought that might take care of our problem. But they're wanting to pull their students out and go remote because of the control in that building specifically. I feel like I've had enough calls that I need to be an advocate for that building to go 2 weeks. I believe that. I know that is very difficult on families, working families. I also know, though, if I don't control it now, that we're heading to a place where we're going to be out a lot longer, and we're thinking, give us 2 weeks right now and see if we can get control of it and keep in school longer. And I'm okay that we could come back to the table on the 9th to determine that plan. I think that building would really like to do the model that Woodsfield brought forward and do the 4-day, 100% capacity with a Wednesday being a remote teacher day or teacher and student day. I think that alleviates some of the pressures that our staff is starting to feel, because this challenging time that we have is super challenging on all of us. And I'm starting to see them wear out a little bit on me. They've been standing here hand by hand, those teachers with us, doing one heck of a good job. I think we need to give them, if we're going to try to stay in longer into the school year, now that we're moving into the flu season here, I think we got to give them a little extra support. That in the beginning, when we had these conversations, I think our plans in the beginning were good, but now I think we need to be adjust a little. I made the same decisions, Greg, as what you're saying the first time we worked with Monroe that first week. And I probably didn't make the complete, going 1 week wasn't probably the most popular decision when some folks wanted to go 2 weeks then. But it didn't work. The numbers did explode on us.
One more thing, Cindy, are the teachers going to be in the building for the next 2 weeks, or are they going to be at home?
I think they can. Once again, I kind of think that that once the kids are out of there, that there's a lot more room and social distancing that can happen. But I also would like to give that power to Mr. Simple in that specific building, so he can monitor the health of those teachers. And if they can work from home, I would be okay with that. Now, remember, some of them are parents and have some of these kids too. So I think I'd like to give that to him to work with his staff to determine who can be in the building and who needs to be home.
Jerry Gus, since we're still in the yellow, I'm for keeping the places open, the schools open, and let the parents decide whether they want to send them or not. They know what the risk is, and they're the experts because they know if they want their kids or not. I had a call the other day, and the guy told me, what am I going to do? And I said, I can't answer that question. You got to ask yourself what's best for you and your daughter. So I'm saying leave the buildings open and let the parents decide what they want to do. We're still in the yellow.
I'm getting a couple texts here, which is the how I told the principals this morning to work with me. Joe says he would like for his staff to work from school if possible. I'm getting from Zach. He'd be more than willing if I need to call him in for you to talk to him. They prefer 100% of kids 4 days a week. Ed, and I told you Ed's, and those just came in.
Cindy, this is Bev. I just have a Belmont County question, and this information may not be available where the hot spot is there, but I think primarily our kids come from 3 townships there in Belmont County. Do we know if I'm assuming the hot spot is not there because our students coming from Belmont County don't seem to be largely affected. Do we know like what area the hot spot is in Belmont County?
I do not know, but I could mute and make a call here. They did say I could reach out to them during the meeting. I'm going to guess it's not, because I believe that the kids are quarantined and currently in the building are coming from Wetzel County.
Okay.
The quarantine came from Wetzel County. Then would you like me to make that call?
No, I'm assuming since we don't have quarantines from those 3 townships there. I just thought if you had that information.
They did feel comfortable as of today, that we could keep that building open at 100% a little, and stay safe today.
I guess my opinion is, I think if we go 4 days, we're going to have all the schools wanting to go 4 days. So I guess I would support the plan for Monroe Central for 2 weeks or a week at a time, whatever the majority is, and then going back 100%.
And that's a very good point, Bev, because, and I've had this conversation with the principals, that if we kind of can support for the most part the same plan for all buildings, it helps us with food and it helps us with transportation. But I did share the way the number 1 recommendation was for each building. Now, most of the principals did tell me that they could support that model that had come from Josh. And it looked like early today that our curriculum director, Jennifer Bohatch, also agreed that that wasn't a bad plan to do the 4-day, 100% capacity with a 1-day remote.
Yeah, Mrs. Brill, you commented to everybody else's comments, but you've never acknowledged mine. Don't you agree with me, or you have
I'm-
not acknowledged me at all? Is there a reason behind it?
I didn't know I didn't do that, but ask me again.
I just asked you, you know, I said that I'm for keeping the buildings open and let the parents decide, and
Oh,
you
I'm sorry. I thought that was a statement, not a question.
Well,
So
it was.
as a question, you are for 100% keeping the buildings at yellow, or because we're yellow, correct?
Yes,
And let the parents decide if they pull their students remotely.
yes, that's what I'm for.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't address that because I didn't take that as a question, but that is the current plan we are on. I'm coming to you because I have true concerns about the Monroe Central building. I can support the recommendations that are coming from the principals right now for the other buildings. From my conversations with them, most of them had told me they'll support your decision. That they can continue on the 5-day week that we are currently doing, which my understanding is that's what you're supporting. But they also could do and aren't totally against the 4-day, which was a recommendation from Woodsfield Elementary, to go 100% capacity for 4 days with 1 remote. So I can support you saying that. What I do not support is the Monroe Central decision because they're sitting in a yellow county, because to me, that is a hot spot for us. If you would like, I do have principals that were willing to have me call them in if you would like to speak with any of them.
Cindy, this is Greg again. I just want to reiterate that Bev kind of made her stance, and I feel like that keeping the 100% open, everybody else, and if Josh wants that 4 days with the 1-day remote, just to see how things are going, I just feel like that we should reconvene within a week and see what happens this week. My stance is 1 week out from Monroe Central, and we reconvene to assess the situation. And if it drops or stays steady, or we show some improvement, that possibly all in 5 days, or possibly 4 days with the 1-day remote the following week. I just feel like 2 weeks is too long. The remote didn't go very well last spring, and we're going to jump right back into it 2 weeks. I feel like it's too long. That's my stance.
I can appreciate that. A couple things that we took into consideration was in that 2-week period, the current 100 kids that are on quarantine would be off quarantine with no more added to the list. I agree with you. We had a rough start when we went to remote the first time, but I'm going to say that's because we were not prepared. I think Jennifer Bohatch has been doing a heck of a good job in Tess Hill and her crew working with our staff to get them up to speed on using technology in this way and using different methods of being able to deliver remotely. And I feel like I'm hearing from the staff, they're getting their feet under them and they're doing a much better job at it today. I did ask that same question to all of the principals when I was polling them on what we were going to take to you as a recommendation today. And it sounded like they were ready. They were ready for whatever we needed to do on Monday, which would be based on your decisions today. Great, I'll say 1 week's better than nothing at this point. And I'm okay with supporting the board if they want to convene and come back again and make a decision on the next week. I did want you to know, though, in working in collaboration with the health department, those 100 students with no more added and no more positives would be off. That would be 2 full weeks and they would be off the quarantine list.
One more question in terms of that last statement. Of the 100 students that are quarantined, that obviously didn't just happen. So they're several days into their quarantine. Based on what I've heard, obviously I don't believe everything I hear, but if that's the case, this 14 days quarantine would start today, but so some of the kids will be off, assuming by next week, or most of them. The 2 full weeks would be everyone. But again, if we see the quarantine number drop drastically next week, I just feel confident that this is a spike because of lack of judgment on some people, and it could be a hard lesson learned for down the road. And I feel like that we can continue with our education 100% all in for the students and, get into the holidays. And I thought, we all talked, we'd be lucky to get this far. And that's a shout out to the staff and everyone that we've got to this point. Like you said earlier, that, we've done a great job taking care of these kids, and we just happen to have a little bit of a hiccup right now. And I think it's going to make people realize that we need to take this a little bit more serious. So again, the 1 week, and I'd like to just to discuss it again next week and move on from that point. I don't want to commit to too long.
Greg, so you just to keep giving more information to the group to help with your decision. And you don't have this in front of you, but there are on the 30th, there should be 44 students who come off that list. And of the 44, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like possibly 6 of the positives will also come off that list at a time. So that would leave 3, 4, 5 positives that won't come off until, and the rest of the list is November 6th when they can return. There's a few on there that are still sick and they're still monitoring for a release date for them. But for the most part, it looks like the list is split in about 50, almost 50%. 44 of them will come off on October 30th. If there are no more questions, I will turn it back over to you, Sarah.
Okay. So, Greg, I got what you said about Monroe Central, and I kind of agree. As long as we can come back and look at it again, I think going 100% immediately or Monday gives them the opportunity to kind of heal, maybe do some deep cleaning. I didn't think of that, Cindy. Are you guys planning on any deep cleaning?
Yes.
But what do you guys think about Woodsfield Elementary going to the 4-day, 100% for 4 days, and then Wednesday being a remote day? What's your thoughts on that, guys?
I'm okay with it. If that's what Josh has decided to do, regardless of the situation, if it's, is it COVID concerns or is it just something he thinks it's better for instruction?
Here, I'll give you some of his points that he was given to me of what he was thinking. Number one, having that 1 day allowed for a day of deep cleaning. 2, it's a response to the county rise in the total number of cases that are happening. Throws the teachers a bone as they are struggling keeping up with TBTS and remote instruction, which is, I think, the point I made that gives a little bit of a breather for them. Let's see. He thinks with our focus on our educational plans of where we're wanting to move targets, that it can focus more on instructional improvement rather than just surviving, and keeps us on the same schedule as schools who have to go hybrid. And I think that statement means the rest of our school district, if anyone's going on a hybrid plan. That was some of his talking points of why he made that decision. Remember, his building is one of ours that is stuffed to the gills with students too. It's a little bit harder in his building to keep the social distancing guidelines that we really wanted to do.
Cindy, did you have an end date on that for Woodsfield Elementary, or are you talking about finishing out the school year with that?
I am not sure, but I'll send him a text.
Okay.
Honestly, to tell you the truth, logically, I'm thinking, if it's working, I would support his building for that. But I also think that immediately what was going through my mind when I was asking them to answer some few questions with me is to try to get this spike that we have under control to stay in school longer. But I'll send him a text here really quick.
Well, I was also wondering why the 4-day 100% capacity and not hybrid?
This is Bev. I was wondering the same thing, because if we're stuck to our gills, I'm not sure the 4 days is going to help with the spread at all.
You know what, I might see if I can get him on the phone, but one of the earlier conversations from those who were wanting to do the 100% was in thoughts of their kids needed to be in school and that having them in front of the teacher was the best thing. But let me see if I can get him to answer the phone, and I'll let you ask him a few questions. I'm going to mute for a second.
So Greg, you're comfortable with 100%. Ron and Jerry, how do you feel about 100% for 1 week for Monroe Central remote?
I'm not for shutting any buildings down, sir, because we're in the yellow, and we set that policy, and that's the problem around here. We never go with our policy. We keep going away from it. I'm all about policy, and
Well,
we set that policy, and that's why I feel that, let the parents make the decision. They're the experts, not us. I can't make a decision for a parent. And
I would
I'm all to keep them kids from getting an education.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Jerry, but the parents haven't helped and not all of them, but at least some of them, when they support having the gatherings like they have. All high schools had a homecoming, something of some sort, and that certainly didn't help us. And I think, to Greg's point, the parents got to work with us here.
Sarah, I don't think all schools had a homecoming party.
It wasn't called a homecoming thing. It was a gathering around homecoming time. And I heard that all 3 schools had one.
Well, I never heard that.
Greg, did you hear that?
Yes.
That all 3 schools had a party?
No, that all 3 schools had some sort of gathering for homecoming.
Okay.
I wouldn't, whether it be a dance, get together, a crowning, whatever they had something in reference to homecoming. Now, whether that's true or not, I can't confirm. I'm just saying that was the talk over the last week or so when the numbers started to spike, that it wasn't in the school population. It was the adults and those particular students that are around those either coaches or adults that had these gatherings, kind of like what happened with the Monroe Central coaches being quarantined, that there was a get together of some sort for the football team, and those 2 individuals were quarantined because they were in contact with somebody that tested positive. I know you can't, and it's the matter of, like I said earlier, is it's not so much about getting together. It's about observing the mandates as far as social distancing and wearing your mask, and which a lot of people aren't doing. It's not so much that you can't gather, because everybody gathers, the families gather and people have things, and we have sports going on with many, many people involved, they're just not wearing their masks and observing social distancing. And it is spreading.
This is Bev. I just wanted to clarify, Ron. I don't think they were school-sponsored gatherings.
Right.
They were not.
Okay, because I know River didn't have anything for sure.
Yeah, and talk's hearsay. I hear that all the time. And, you know, show me the evidence is what I'd like to see.
Well, Jerry, you bring stuff like that to us all the time. You've heard this and you've heard that.
Hearsay all the time. That's why I'm trying to tell you. It's probably hearsay here. You always tell me that, so I'm just telling you, it's probably hearsay.
We're getting out of order here.
Yes, we are.
I have Josh Ishii. I pulled him away from his building duties here to answer some questions for you about his suggested plan. I don't know if you can hear him, but go ahead, Josh.
Can you hear me?
Looks like it.
Okay. So our suggested plan, my team here at Coach Dominic and came up with was a 4-day full capacity, 1-day remote. So we were in favor of this before school year. A couple of the reasons why is it allows our teachers to, perform remote instruction at a higher quality. It gives them the time to do that. In addition to providing that for, a higher quality remote instruction method. So parents have a, choice, a better choice as far as whether they send their child to school or not. It also provides 1 day within the middle of the week to deep clean. Going back to social distancing, it is an issue, at least here at Worcester Elementary, because we have so many kids. But in speaking to another principal last night who has roughly 200 students less than us, our percentage was actually less. And that's given that, the, I think, agreed upon hotspot of Monroe Central is, on our campus. So I think we've done an extremely good job. Our staff, including, going from teachers all the way through all of our classified personnel, doing everything that needs to be done in the building to keep it as safe as possible. To my knowledge, there's been no contact with COVID within the building. The students that we have on quarantine have either come in contact with a positive member outside of the building. So, like I said, I think that's just as an additional assurance of what we're doing in the building, at least at Woodson Elementary, is working. And I've got remote instruction and families and parents choosing in-person versus remote. We started the year with a little over 40 remote instruction. Is that correct? Yep. And I think we're down to under 15 at this point. So that's just how many of those parents have decided that remote instruction isn't their choice when it comes to the education of their children. They'd rather have them here face-to-face with our teachers, get the instruction and the socializing, the mental health, physical health, things like that they receive at school that remote instruction cannot provide. So that's why, here at Worcester, we feel that the 4-day model works out extremely well. Having said that, I know the question was posed whether this would be a permanent solution or not. I would like to, follow the board's thinking on other recommendations as let's try it out. Let's see how it goes for a shorter time period before we decide this is what we're going to do for the entire year. That way we can evaluate it and decide is this something that we want to continue with or not.
Hey, Josh, this is Ronnie. I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Has 5 days been working pretty good for you?
So I guess that's a loaded question. So if you want to ask, is it working as far as keeping our numbers low, as far as quarantine and COVID positives? Yeah, like I said, we're under 3% as far as students on quarantine. As far as yesterday when I ran the numbers, it was under 2.5%. So yeah, it's working well. One of the larger issues that we are receiving is, I can tell you a couple things, is our classified personnel is really having to work extremely hard to keep the building clean, all high contact areas, to make sure they're wiped down, disinfected, things like that. When there is no, when kids are here every day, all day, that's a challenge. And it's also a challenge for our certified staff doing the remote instruction. So that provides at least a little breathing room for those employees, as well as, you know, ensures I can more ensure parents who have questions about our sanitation process here at school. I can tell them, hey, there's a whole day where that's all we're doing.
But also,
It
would that
improves
be
the
a-
remote instruction.
wouldn't that be a problem in all other schools classified having a hard time cleaning?
Well, it might be. I can only speak about Woodfield Elementary, Ronnie.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good question. It seems logical that it would be, but I couldn't tell you. I don't want to speculate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Josh, this is Beverly. Did you say you, at the beginning of the school year, you had 40 students remote and now you're down to only 15 students remote?
Yeah, I don't have those. Those are estimates, Bev. I think we were closer to 50 than 40 at the beginning of the year, and I think we're right around 15, give or take. I could get those numbers for you, but yeah, we've dropped pretty substantially.
That's fine. I don't need exacts. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think I anticipate it being those numbers changing. Probably, if I had to speculate again, I hate to do that, but if I had to speculate, I would say that more students are going to come back to us face to face versus remote here at the end of the grading period, because they're now have that choice afforded to them.
Josh,
If the board doesn't have any more questions for Josh,
well, sorry, Cindy.
I was just gonna say I'd let him go back to his duties, but are there any more questions for Josh?
He may have hit on this. I apologize if he did it. I missed it, but why doesn't he not prefer the hybrid, half in on 2 days? Or did he address that?
Yeah, but I can. I think going 4 days full capacity, we get twice as much education to those students versus the hybrid model where they're only here 2 of those days.
He cut out. Cindy, can you hear what he's saying?
Go ahead, Josh, say it again.
Yeah, I feel that at full capacity at 4 days versus the half capacity at 4 days, we're seeing our kids twice as much. We're allowing consistency. We're able to maintain observation on their mental and physical well-being much better, and they're getting twice as much education. What I would say of the highest quality. I would say, I think most educators would agree with me, again, speculating, but my opinion is face-to-face education trumps remote education every day of the week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone on the board, agrees with you and supports that. But when you factor in the COVID, that, as you are experiencing, there's a monkey wrench into it all. But my thing is, you guys are stuffed to the gills. And I just felt like the hybrid gives you a chance to give that social distancing. So you're a little bit more safer. You're safe as far as having Wednesdays off with full capacity the other 4 days, because you can catch up and get a better grip on cleaning. But as far as being able to social distance, that's not helping you any, right?
I would say, yeah, it's not helping us. But like I said, I talked to a principal yesterday, just last night. He's got 200 less students in his building, and he's able to socially distance more than we are able to at the 6-foot recommendations, and our percentage of quarantine students was actually lower. And if you look at Monroe Central as well, I know it's a different situation because they are a high school and we're an elementary, but they have much less kids. I would say roughly half of what we have. Of course, their percentages is much higher than ours as well. So while the social distancing is important, and I'm not going to deny that, I think with the precautions that we're taking and that have been put in place, it's been pretty effective, at least at Woodfield.
While Monroe Central is remote, if we go that route, would you be able to use any of their facilities while they're out, or have you thought about that?
I guess it's a possibility. I just assumed that it might not be the safest thing because, as I understood it, there would be cleaning being done at the high school, and we wouldn't want to cross-contaminate. I know we had talked about, Sprill and I had spoken about a FFA national convention that at one point we were talking about combining schools to observe digitally, and we both felt it was the prudent and better choice not to send students, back and forth across, buildings if not needed. Additionally, with that, where I'm hurting with is staff. I think Mrs. Wick and I, when we looked at our numbers earlier this week, I don't think we've been at 100% capacity all year with staff, and some dues are very short. So, and they're very high in demand on top of that. So even if we had the room right now, I don't know that we have the staff to really support, using. I don't think that reward in that.
What did you do, Ronnie?
I didn't do anything.
I didn't hear the last part of Josh's comment, but that's okay. I think I get it. Thank you,
If
Josh.
you don't have any more questions for Josh, I'd like to call Judge Simple in. He sent some comments along comparing what his building has compared to Josh's. He must be listening to the conversation, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It'd be easier for me to send him an invite to the Zoom meeting so everybody can hear him clearly instead of a speakerphone.
Sure.
Okay, tell him I'll send it.
Okay.
Okay, I sent the invite. I should have did that with Josh also. I just didn't even think about it.
All right, give him a second. He's going to log on. And send an invite to Zach. He would like to also address the board.
While you're waiting for them to come on, Cindy, could you answer me a few questions?
Yes.
Of all the schools, how many have come back from remote?
Come back from remote.
Yeah, I understand a lot of schools, because I know for a fact how many come back down the river and that, and all these other schools. How many come back from remote to come back face to face?
You mean the students?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see if I can get that number from Jennifer, and give me a second to mute. She is not with us today, but she may be on the call.
All right.
I know, Ron, the Blue Sky Academy students, there's not very many left now. Most of the remote ones are the ones that are remote.
Yeah, that's okay. But I knew a bunch of them come back. I mean,
Blue Sky, nobody's come back from it.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them.
There's only a few left.
I heard of people who didn't, I heard that we couldn't let her, they wouldn't let them come back into the school.
There's not that many left. I'm not sure what happened.
Hey, Ronnie,
Yes, ma'am.
I'll have to get back to you with that, but
That's-
probably the last time she's not answering, but maybe a week and a half or two ago, we were looking at the report, and it was kind of steady with how many were coming in and how many were going and how many were wanting to get on the plan. And I know that she was working individually with those families who were wanting to go remote because of, our spike that we had had. But I'll have to get those numbers back to you. I don't have access to the to-date, an up-to-date amount of numbers. So even though Josh may have seen more coming back into the building, we saw more wanting to go out on remote in a different building.
Oh, well, I know for a fact some of the schools, people's coming back 10 to 9 weeks. Hey, and I have another question. I wrote down here, how many confirmed cases of the virus do we have at Swiss Hills?
I believe Let me check, but I believe there is one positive at Swiss Hills.
Oh, just one?
One positive, yes.
Okay. How many in quarantine there?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm on now, Cindy, if you can hear me.
Yes, hang on, Joe. Doing a rough count here, scrolling down an Excel document. I'm gonna say 20 with one positive.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Welcome. Joe, go ahead. The board, I know that you've been listening and might have some statements of being able to compare your building to the other side of your campus, what they're experiencing, and then I'll let them ask you some questions too.
Yeah, I think as I listen to the comments, some of it makes a lot of sense, especially when you were discussing the activities of the community and how it's kind of trickled down from adults to the student population, because it's affected our upper classes to a far greater degree than our younger classes. So for example, we have about half of our student body still left in the building right now. We have there's a group that is out on remote. We started with about 26 kids on remote or blue sky. We now have in the mid-30s, and that number's rising. I had several phone calls this week that I fielded personally, and then the secretaries have fielded others of parents who were requesting to take their kids out of school and put them on remote learning because they were worried. We had told them that we wanted to wait until the governor showed what the color designation was, and they agreed to wait to take their kids out for the most part, but we still had a couple that left yesterday and then 2 others earlier this week that went out. But most of the calls have come in. They said they would wait until they see what happens at the end of the week. So here we are now. Then we have, I don't know what the number is right now because it changes. It's gone up every day. It started out Monday at in the 20s, and then now we're well into the 30s for kids that are quarantined. It's probably over 40 by now. We have 7 positive cases in the student population. We had 1 staff member that was a positive. We have another staff member who's out because his son was a positive. And then we have 2 staff members that are teaching remotely because the doctor told them they're in too much danger to be in the building. I have another staff member whose doctor told her the same thing this week, and we just have the doctor's notice now, and we're working on that. So I have a total of 5 staff members out, in addition to all the kids. So can we social distance with that many kids in the building? Well, we've still got most of our freshman class here, so that the freshman class reflects a lot more like what's going on at Woodsfield Elementary, where the younger kids, it hasn't affected them nearly as much as it has the older kids. So we still have some classrooms where social distancing is difficult. I don't know if it kind of paints a picture of what's going on here or not, but it's fairly grim. So.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you a question? This is Ronnie.
Yeah.
With 5 staff members out, are you able to get subs for them 5 staff members?
Only 1 out.
Not
Oh,
all.
I had 5 staff members out.
Yeah.
Didn't you say 5 out?
We will. We have 4 out now, but if we were to come back next week, we would have 5 out. And that's just the ones that I know of, not the ones that would normally be out for a doctor's appointment or something like that. So no, we do not have full coverage. I think maybe 1 or 2 days we've actually had full coverage. all year. So far in the first 9 weeks anyway. And so it's difficult. We can't find subs. We've got a few guys that come in that have been real troopers that come in whenever we call them, but there's only 2 or 3 of them that we can depend on, and we're shorthanded all the time, and we're having to cover. But the classrooms where the teachers are teaching remotely, we can cover that with an aide. So a lot of times I'll have to pull an aide off of the duty that they normally do, and they go and sit in that classroom and try to do as much of their work as they can from that classroom, but also watch the kids as the teachers are teaching them remotely. So as a teaching staff, when you have that many kids that are out, you're teaching all day long to the kids that you do have in class, which are taught one way, obviously, because you're face to face. And then the students that are remote, they get a different type of lesson because they're remote. And then we have to think about 2 different types of lessons, because we have some kids that can get online and they could watch even a live stream of the teacher as they're teaching the class. But then we also have another large group of kids who are remote learners or they're on quarantine, but they have no internet. So we have to teach them a different way. So the teachers are actually trying to do things 3 different ways all at the same time, which is very, very stressful on the staff. I can tell you that. And it's like that in the other buildings too, maybe not to the same degree as it is here, but having that, I keep hearing the conversation of having that Wednesday. I think having that Wednesday to actually do some quality work with the remote learners would be highly beneficial. So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Ronnie, some of the staff are helping me out here. So let me get you some answers. Whoever asked the question about Swiss Hills, the actual number right now is 22. For the remote learners, this report was ran at 9:18. Blue Sky, we have 111 out, and on remote learners, we have 195 on remote learning as of 9:18 this morning. I also see that Zach's come on board, and you could see he's muted, but Zach can explain his situation over at Powhatan.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys this morning. So as you know, Belmont County switched to orange yesterday. So according to the plan that was approved over the summer, we would need to switch to hybrid. However, I looked at our numbers last night. We have 0 students who have tested positive in our building the entire school year. We only have 2 who are quarantined, and they are actually quarantined because of a West Virginia case. Somebody they came in contact with, and they will actually be back on Monday. So as of Monday, we'll have 0 positive tests and 0 quarantines, but at this moment, we're going to have to switch to hybrid. And my case is, I understand why we passed that in the summer, but as we learn more, I feel like it needs to be a case by case for each building, because I have 0 cases and I have 0 quarantine, but we're going with the hybrid. There's other buildings who have cases and quarantines, but there's, under their yellow, they would stay open. I also talked to the health department this morning. I talked to, I always forget his name.
Why is he going hybrid?
Daniel Grady at the health department this morning. And he said that while Belmont County is orange, Powhatan itself is not a hot spot. And he said that he would be fully confident in supporting whatever decision I made as a building principal. So we do have the health department's blessing to not go hybrid if we would choose not to.
You just said earlier, 100%. Even if it's orange, you can do 100%.
And Zach, your recommendation right now is, as well, what Mrs. Brill brought us, is that you don't want to change anything right now. You're fine staying 100%.
Yeah, I had a brief meeting with my staff this morning, and we're all on board that we really want our kids here. We would prefer to stay as we are 5 days a week. If you guys would prefer, we take a day off for cleaning and for staff to work on remote. So we would be in session 4 days a week and have the one remote day. We could live with that, but we really feel it's important that if we're in the building going to have kids here, we want 100% of them here. I just looked at our numbers. We have around 135 in our building every day. And if you look at some of the other schools, even if they were at 50%, they would still have 50, 60, 70, 80 more kids than we do at 100. So, you know,
Mhm.
my building is certainly different because we are a very small building. I've kind of learned from other buildings' mistakes, like not necessarily our district, but just friends I have across the state. Our classes have the same seating chart in every single class they go to. They have the same seating chart in lunch. We line our students up based off of our seating chart. We had a student get tested the other day and we went ahead and did contact tracing. And it would have only affected 3 other kids in our building. So we feel like we're doing a good enough job. Even if we do have a positive test, it will affect very few people. And we feel like we can continue to go 5 days a week at 100% and be completely effective doing that.
Thanks, Zach. That's you as well as the other principals. I don't know if we took the time to say this on behalf of the board, but I feel like we all think that, you know, you guys are teachers are and the all of our OPSI staff, you're all doing a great job. None of us, I don't think any of us thought that we would ever get this far. And we really do appreciate that. Like, I don't want you guys to think that, you know, we're coming in here thinking anybody's done a bad job. So we do appreciate all the effort that's been given. I guess, Cindy, my question or I guess maybe my concern with like Woodsford Elementary going the 4 days and being remote the 1 day, that's different. That's not like our hybrid model. We really didn't even talk about that kind of a model, did we?
We did, but back when we originally did the plan, remember we were taking in the social distancing and the 6 foot and how big our buildings were. And so we settled on this, you know, the plan that you approved. But this was a model that we talked about, and this is a model that the principals and their staff have been throwing around of, you know, one that they think they're liking. By the way, I have Eric James is calling in too. You know, as the conversations are going on here, the principals are wanting to work with you on plans here. But let me also, my staff that is also listening is helping me out get better numbers to you. Back to the Blue Sky and the remote learners. It looks like out of the combination, 37 students have come back off of those original plans. So we're still standing at, as of today, 111 Blue Sky and 195 remote, but 37 families have felt comfortable enough to come back into the school system. Now, I do know that we have this past couple of days, we have had parents calling on, as of right now, how to figure out to go remote. So it's a fluid number, but that's as of right now to answer your question. If you don't have any more questions for Zach, I'll let Eric address you guys with his building.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can.
All right. Well, I'm actually on my way down through Powhatan. I had an appointment this morning, but I wanted to just kind of give everybody an update and answer any questions. So if you have any questions about my building specifically, ask away.
Mr. James, I got one. How many come back from remote or Blue Sky since the beginning of your facilities?
Right now, we have 33 out of our 60 total that are coming back. And we're not going to be able to have the ability to socially distance our building. So that's kind of the issue that we're going to be up against. We had to, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Are you not wanting to stay 100% though?
I don't think it's an issue of me not wanting to stay 100%. I'm willing to do whatever the pleasure of the board is. I'm going to, make the necessary modifications to my building as much as I need to in order to keep the kids safe. But I think personally, right now we're pretty safe. The 3 quarantines that we have were a result of Wetzel County. But we've had 0 positive cases.
Okay.
And my building's about, at or just slightly below what Josh's is. But if I recall correctly at the beginning of all this, I believe our building had the highest number of remote kids. And that's a big issue in all this. The ones that are remote, the educators are really spread thin in terms of the remote learning process. I have some grade levels that have as many as 11 remote. Now, some of them are coming back, some aren't.
Connie, can you please add Chris Caldwell to the invite? Here's a comment from Chris, and I believe this is true too. We talked about this last night. If he's starting to listen to the conversation, but if one building goes to a 4-day in and a 1-day out and the others don't, then we might have we might have teachers that would like to have that option too at their building. So I think in essence, we're thinking that outside of the hot spot with Monroe Central High School, that whatever you decide is a learning plan for those who are in yellow, along with Zach's a little bit different in a different county, that maybe the plan be the same.
I would advocate for a 1-day cleaning for sure.
Guys, I sent an invite to the rest of the principals that are not already on here. So everybody has an invite. If they want to join, they're welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
This is Bev. I just have a question. It's not that I don't agree with the 1-day cleaning, but who's going to do all this cleaning if we close down? Who's going to be doing that cleaning in every building?
By the way, while we're talking here, Ed just texted me and he just had a positive case over in his building. So yeah, it hasn't worked through the health department system yet, but it starts. To answer you, Bev, your question was if we, who's cleaning the buildings if we do the remote? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if we would, I think I don't see how we can do it in one building and not another because I think their needs are similar. But if we would close on Wednesday for deep cleaning in every building, I'm not sure who's going to be doing the cleaning.
It would be our current staff that's doing that. We have each of the buildings has a plan worked out. And I feel confident that plan is good. So our OPSI folks do a really good job of keeping those buildings going for us. They're stretched. It's a lot of work for them, but they're doing a good job.
Cindy, could you read the comment, excuse me, the comment from Chris Caldwell again, as far as?
He's basically stating that if we have one building that goes to this 4-day, 1-day learning model, and we don't do it for other ones, there might be teachers in other buildings that want that same option.
Well, and now I'm a little confused with Mr. James, but I'm not entertaining in myself any other plan for River Elementary and Skyview and Bellsville and Powhatan, because their recommendation is that they stay the same 100%. If they wish to do anything different, we need to hear a recommendation from them. That's my opinion. I would prefer to hear that from them. You know, Mr. Simple has come to us and wants to go 100% remote. And, you know, I'll tend to go with that because that's his recommendation. He's on the scene there. He knows what's best. And, you know, we have a health issue there. As for everyone else, if they prefer to do something different, they need to bring that recommendation to you, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm going to take up for the staff here a little bit. I mean, we were working last night, you know, after a long day of negotiations. So I was making individual calls to each of them, and I missed them. You know, they were leaving the school buildings, and we have connectivity problems across the county. So making phone calls and trying to get it on everyone on board, we should have had our conversation together, but that's just logistics. So, you know, I asked each of them what their thoughts were and what they wanted to do. And they've changed overnight a little bit based on each other's conversations about how to handle their building and then also the cases that we're receiving. So that's, you know, it happens. But I think right now you're starting to hear as they're listening in, and I believe I've got Chris Caldwell that's come on. We haven't heard from him yet. And Matt Unger is also on here. If you would like to let them address your ask questions specifically about each of their buildings, and maybe they can tell you now hearing the conversations of what their staff and them would like to do. I do believe though, and we did have, a couple of us had this conversation last night, that I can't have a different plan for each building because I don't think our transportation and our food service can keep, they would do it, but I think it's unnecessary in one sense. Now, granted, Monroe Central is a different situation for us at the moment. But one building or two at a time, our staff is pretty darn good making, and I'm talking about all of us in this district, making it work, but making it work and also making sure that we give a breather to these folks are two different things. You know, making it work temporarily is one thing, but let's make sure that we're not wearing them out while we're at it too, and still keeping everyone safe and doing the best learning plan we can. So I see that they're popping on here. Let me, Chris Caldwell, if you want to unmute and if you want to share your thoughts and your buildings challenges that they have right now for the board, and then let them ask you some questions.
Yeah, can you guys hear me then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, first, I didn't think we would make it this far into the year, and we actually have. It's gone, you know, surprisingly well, but there's still challenges. There's still uncertainties. There's still teachers that are scared, teachers that can't social distance, but there's teachers that are making it work because they have less in the classroom. You know, so as far as this building, like, it shouldn't be what I want, it should be what the building wants. So I've kind of talked to some of the teachers, and you know, I think there was a comment made when I first started listening, you know, really going 4 days full capacity and 1 day out doesn't help your social distancing concerns and problems. And it doesn't, you know, so I guess that is a valid point. But my point was, when I started listening, I sent the message to Cindy that, you know, we all have remote learners, and the numbers I'm looking here right now, we're down to 10 remote learners at Skyview, but we started with like 19. And we're down to 15 Blue Sky and 12 others that are doing other options outside the district. So those numbers have come down since the beginning. But I can tell you there are parents that are getting concerned that might pull their kids out. There's parents that want us to go all in, you know, because they need their kids in school. And I understand that too. So, you know, I think we got to do what's best for the students, and keeping them in school is obviously the best thing to do. But, you know, we just have to be smart about it. So, but my point was with the message to Cindy, back to that, is if we do 4 days at one building and 1 day out, and we don't do that for other buildings, I know it's going to create problems with our teachers, and understandably so, because we still have remote learners in every building. And right now, the teachers are expected to do that and teach in their classrooms. And some of them, they can't do the same platform in the classroom that they're doing for remote learners because of internet connectivity and capacity. So some of them are paper pencil. We have to make copies, they have to pick them up. And so it is extra work, on all sides, for the teacher, for the office workers, for myself, which is not a problem, but nonetheless, it's extra work. I'm not saying I want compensated for it, but the teachers are the one that are preparing and prepping for that. And they want compensation, understandably so. Now, in some cases, it may be that the student can zoom into their classroom at a given time. They have internet and it's not extra work. So it is kind of almost a teacher by teacher, case by case basis. But I think that it is going to create problems if we do it for one building and not for others. Like Zach said, I agree with his model, and maybe he doesn't have problems with remote learners and his teachers, and I don't know that. But that's just kind of where I'm at. Like I said, I didn't think we'd make it this far, and we did, and I'm glad. I wanted to keep kids in school as long as possible because we know that we're coming on cold and flu season, and those symptoms are the same as COVID symptoms. So there's going to be a lot of kids that are sent home. They're going to have to get tests. They're going to have to see their PCPs. We're going to have that battle. So, whatever you guys decide, if it's a board decision to vote on, I'm good with. But if you want to ask me questions now, you can, and it's up to you guys, whatever you want to do.
I got a question.
Yeah, I can hear you, Jerry.
With this here deep cleaning stuff we're talking about, Chris, what's the difference between deep cleaning on Wednesday and then the cleaning already takes place every day? What's the big difference?
Yeah, if you're asking me, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I've not been told if it's going to be an outside company, source, or it's our custodians. So I don't know the answer, Jerry.
Does anybody know the answer?
Nothing.
Anybody, Cindy?
No, I am trying to see if I can get Lori Gardner on here to see if she can speak to you about that. But that when they talk about deep cleaning, it means that, every day they're doing the high contact areas, door handles, desktops, those areas that are constantly being touched, those are cleaned all the time. But then for a deep clean, then they can hit areas that they cannot get in a regular day, like spraying down rooms and gyms and places that aren't the constant contacts that they are doing on every couple hours all day long. So, but give me a second to see. And if Joe is on, Joe, if you're listening, if you could call Lori into your office and let her address the board on specifically what her staff does, that might help answer some questions. So folks, to use the word deep cleaning might not be the right terminology logically to be using, but really what it means is they can do more extensive cleaning than what they are doing every couple hours all day long in the building. I'm gonna see if I can get her on here to represent what her staff is doing, because they do have a plan.
And Cindy, while you're doing that, I want to just pose a point and a question to the board. Guys, we called this as an emergency meeting so that we could determine first and foremost what to do with Monroe Central. I'm hearing, the elementary schools, the other schools, they're not quite sure, so they don't have a recommendation for us. Would you agree that we should kind of maybe table that discussion, and then if we need to have another meeting next week to determine those guys? I'm just afraid we're getting out of the realm of the emergency meeting. If you don't have the recommendation today, then it isn't an emergency. So what are your thoughts, guys?
Sarah, I know you asked the board, but I just wanted to kind of chime in too. I'm kind of in an emergency situation at Powhatan too, because if we don't make a decision for Powhatan, we have to go hybrid on Monday. And I would prefer not to do that because we really need those kids in our building. So I just wanted to bring that up too.
I agree, Sarah. We do have two things emergency wise here, and that is Monroe Central and Zach, because he is identified in Orange County.
Okay, and I'm great to entertain the emergent stuff, but I think that maybe with the other schools, that may be more of maybe a detailed conversation or some more conversations with the board to educate us and get people's feelings, not necessarily for this particular meeting, unless there's something else that.
I agree. And now that I'm hearing you say that, last night late, some of our conversations and thoughts with the building principals was that my concern was of how many kids we had coming out of the Orange County that was sitting in some of our other buildings. You know, some of the numbers are a little high in a couple places, and knowing, once again, I'll make the statement, Corona doesn't know to stop at the border of the yellow county.
Greg, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Okay. At this moment, I'd like to make a motion to stay with our current educational plan for all schools 100%.
I second.
You don't want to let Monroe Central go out 100% for 1 week even, Ron?
No.
Okay. I think I may have to log back on, Connie. Come on.
His buddy.
Okay, voting should be open.
The current educational plans and increasing.
I didn't hear one.
I thought you made a motion to keep the schools open.
I made a motion to keep the schools open 100%.
Well, that ain't
Connie,
good.
I missed the second. Who seconded?
I second, Sarah, I mean, Beth, but.
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay, but please cast your vote, and it's saying here, motion to discuss and the possible amending of the current educational plan.
Look at the-
Yeah, so we're
Look at
we're
the
voting
end,
to,
Jerry. Stay with the current education plan for all schools. Is that what you guys voted for?
Yes.
I can't
No.
read.
No,
What
the current education plan would put Powhatan at a hybrid.
Thank you, Bev.
Ronnie made
All
a
right,
motion
I'll-
to keep
Hold on.
open 100%.
They've done forgot about talking to me in Easter Simple.
What are we voting on? Would somebody please tell me?
Give them a minute, Jerry. They're fixing it.
Okay, because
I made a motion to keep all
Ronnie,
schools
just
100%.
Okay, keep all schools open 100% face-to-face learning, correct?
Yes.
Okay, voting is still open. Bev, did you not get a box?
Connie, we're to disregard what it's saying there then, right?
Yes, I changed it.
do we have to refresh then, Connie?
Hold on just a minute. Let me close this and open it back up. Let me make sure that it's working right. Hold on just a minute. Okay. Now you should be able to see it with the new
Okay,
wording.
yeah. Good now.
You guys see
Thank-
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Connie.
You're welcome. Ron, is yours showing up?
Yeah, but it's showing just amended.
Okay, you want to vote yes, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Winkler?
Yes.
Mr. Gust?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
no.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Now, I got something to say. I agree with Greg and them. I don't see why we can't come back with recommendations from all the schools within a week or so and see how Monroe Central's doing.
Well, Monroe Central is going to lose their staff and more students. So
Well, I know next week I'm gonna try to visit every building and get recommendations from the teachers, the staff and everywhere, and I'm gonna look into these numbers on how many people come back.
Well, with all due respect, the teachers should have made their recommendations to the principals. The principals brought it to Mrs. Brill, and she made recommendations to us, and we didn't follow it. So we need to move on. The next
Yes,
item
ma'am.
of business.
Yes, we do. You know, when people don't get their way, they really get upset.
And when people aren't heard, they really get upset too, Ron.
But you gotta listen to everybody, not just a few. Okay, let's go on.
I think I'm listening to the right ones. So yeah, let's go on.
Yeah.
Discussion and motion of approval of waiving the minimum GPA requirement of the 1.75 for athletic eligibility. Is Mark on the call, Cindy?
I'm here, Sarah.
Okay, good morning.
Yeah, the OHS has changed again, everything because of all the different platforms that all the schools are using currently, with all the different learning techniques that are out there, the different, whether it's in face-to-face, whether it's remote, whether it's online. So the OHSA has waived them. You did this back on April 9th already for the going into the fall, so it's the same as that. We have a regulation. The only regulation is we have a 1.75 GPA, so it would waive that, and that's what we did back in the spring for the first 9 weeks. So it would waive it for the first 9 weeks, now going into the second 9 weeks.
Mark, I got a question. With 1.75, which we already have, you can get all Ds and still play.
Correct.
So why do we want to waiver it? I mean,
well, the 1.75 and what the state's going is, and it's just consistent with everything across the state, because the state says with all the different levels of learning, okay, and the grades coming in at different times, and we have different kids on remote learning. We have some kids that are being homeschooled, a number of different things. So it's our 1.75 is above what the state requires. Okay, that's the difference, and we have to, in order for it to be set aside, we have to waive it, because the OHSAA only waives what they recommend or what they require. Ours is above and beyond that.
yeah, but what I'm saying, if we approve this waiver, then you can get all Fs or anything and still play.
Correct, that is correct.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Mark, what's the state requirement currently?
Yeah, the state's five credits, plus your GPA is lower than the 1.75, Greg. As long as you're passing the 5 credits, I mean, you know, we set the 1.75, that's been set, boy, it's been quite a few years ago. I'm gonna say, Larry, 20 years ago?
Oh.
15, 20 years ago, we set that. It's a higher requirement than what the state recommends or has for their requirements.
So I understand it, but I'd have to agree with Ronnie that I think there needs to be some sort of accountability regardless of our current educational situation, that it seems to me that it opens the door for someone to do nothing and still be rewarded with something. I think we have to have something, regardless if it's the requirement of the GPA or the passing 5 credits out of how many they're taking. I'm not in favor of waiving it, suspending it or changing it to a certain extent. I can understand, but I'm 100% against waiving a requirement.
Okay, I agree with you totally, because there could be a student who basically last spring didn't pass anything, played football, volleyball, golf, anything this fall, now does nothing this fall, has 5 Fs, and also is going to play basketball or wrestle. I see your point, absolutely. If we leave the 1.75 in, then that restriction would still be there if we don't do anything with it. The 5 credits would go away, but still the 1.75 would be held in check.
Yeah, however it works out, you know, if our administration team wants to come up with something. You know, that's not my decision to make, but I still think there has to be some accountability for our student athletes.
I agree. Yeah, and this is, what we do is we ask this because it was it's the same waiver as what was done back in the spring. And if you don't want to do the waiver, that's fine. It just stays, the 1.75 stays in effect.
Any other discussion or questions on the waiver?
I make a motion, we keep the 1.75 in effect.
I'll second.
And I will say this, the reason why we put it on this time was because the 9 weeks ends. So that way we need to know. There you go.
Education first. Good.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mr. Shoemaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Abstain.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Winkler.
Yes.
Motion carries for the current policy to stay the same. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Voting is open.
I don't have my box.
Well, Marshall, good luck.
I'm assuming you want to vote yes.
Really nice.
So we'll be rooting them on.
Yes, and I want you to start getting some more information.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
It's going down.
Yeah.
Mr. Shoemaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Winkler.
Yes.
Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, everybody's getting scared. Yeah.
Thank each of you. I appreciate you taking the time this morning and